Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of New Jersey Black Issues Convention, thank you so very much for coming out to be with us for another year. As you know, this is our 41st year. This is my 40th year. I missed the first New Jersey Black Issues Convention, and I have not missed one since then. My background is in law enforcement. Now it's in higher ed. I'm right down the street at Essex County College for the last 30 years. I was there before I retired. I spent 26 plus years with the Newark Police Department in several capacities, and had 26 plus wonderful years. And now I've had 30 wonderful years at Essex County College in higher ed. It is always good when we get together to talk about public safety and innovations in public safety, especially when it involves the community and law enforcement. That is so very, very important that we do that. The community definitely needs the efforts of law enforcement on all levels, and we need the community. We need you. Law enforcement cannot be effective without you. When there are certain capacities in law enforcement where you really learn law enforcement. And when I was a robbery investigator, it's where I really learned about the criminal justice system, because you had to be very specific in your reports, because you were dealing with persons who had unlawfully taken property by force from another person. So I was in court almost every week, right there on West Market Street, either giving testimony or giving a report to the assistant prosecutor in reference to investigation that I was doing. So, and the reason that I bring that up is that because when you're dealing with major crimes and a community, and you go into a community and someone recognizes you, it's like they give you, they're like sighing, I'm glad that you showed up. You know, someone that I can relate to, someone that I know. And that's why it is so important for you as community persons to be involved in the law enforcement component of the criminal justice system. Now the gentleman will explain to you, their capacities, and again, on behalf of NJBIC, and I'm the treasurer for NJBIC, my background is in law enforcement, but people trust me with their money because, I just don't believe in taking something that I haven't earned, And like I said, I've been with NJBIC for 40 years. When we was making a heck of a lot of money, much more than we are now, I would take the money home when we didn't have a key to the lockbox and take it downtown Newark. I live in a pretty nice neighborhood away from here, and I would leave the money in the back seat of my car, because I could do that at that. I could probably still do it now. Nobody knew it was there but me. And the next morning, on Monday morning, I would take it down to Donald Tucker's office or to his staff so that they could deposit it in the bank. So again, thank you for coming, and Dr. Santana, take it away.
Thank you so much. It's my first time presenting at this conference, but I'm not alone. I'm here with two other great panelists. So maybe let's get started introducing ourselves. We'll be last if you want to attend any of you.
Sure. So hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Phil Buck. and I'm a lieutenant colonel in the New Jersey State Police. So what that means is I'm a branch commander. I oversee our largest branch. Just prior to overseeing this branch, I oversaw our second largest branch. So right now I oversee the operations branch. So to simply describe that, so most of the troopers that you see out on our highways, making car stops, responding to motor vehicle accidents, all the uniformed personnel in the state police, I oversee all of those troopers from north to south. So and all of the detectives that are part of that branch as well. So it's about 2,000 troopers that I'm overseeing right now from an operations standpoint from day to day. So you can imagine the amount of issues, no pun intended, that come into my office or into my phone every day. This is my second in a row Black Issues Conference panel that I've sat on with John as the moderator. So he knows I have a lot to say about community and law enforcement. So I'm going to save all of that to hopefully some questions or some time that we can engage with each other later. But I'll say this, the most important part of why I'm here today and what John already spoke to is that I want to be that sigh of relief as well. I really do. I know how important that is. I grew up in a state police household. My father was a state trooper before I was even born, and when there weren't too many black state troopers, less than 10 at the time that he got on. So the connection between the community and law enforcement and the black and brown community and law enforcement, I know all too well how important that is. So again, I'll reiterate, I want to be one of those of many that give you that sigh of relief, that answers your question or speaks to your concerns or speaks to your compliments if you have them about law enforcement. And so we can continue to bridge that gap, because that's what it's all about. Not just now, we have to continuously bridge that gap between community and law enforcement, because like John said perfectly, that's the only way we can be successful on both sides of the fence. Hopefully we get to know each other just well enough where I give you all a little bit of that confidence leaving today. All right, thank you.
So, thank you. I will be brief. I'm a social worker, and looking at the crowd, I think I can be very candid that the relationship with our community and law enforcement and academia has not been good. It's been rocky. All right? My affiliation is with, if you're familiar with Newark, the Lincoln Park neighborhood, right down by Symphony Hall. So I work with an organization called Lincoln Park Coast Cultural District. We put on the big music, everybody knows the music festival, right, every year. And I think I'm gonna stop right here by just saying I've been the liaison between the community, law enforcement, the community, and academia. And I have a professional history in both that affords me to be able to be in a unique position to do that.
Hi, my name is, I'm Professor Alex Santana. I'm a faculty here at Rutgers Newark at the School of Criminal Justice. And what I want to talk about is a program that we started now 5 years ago called the Public Safety Collaborative, the Newark Public Safety Collaborative. Warren is one of the members of this collaborative. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we have innovated in the way that we engage the community to be, I guess we're not using mics, to be part of conversations, not just to be at the meetings and not just to be physically there and have conversations, but to give the community tools to be able to be co-creators of public safety. In other words, how do we empower the community to actually take action? Like I said, we started this program 5 years ago. It's based in Newark, just in the city of Newark, but we do have stakeholders that represent other areas of the state, both the New Jersey Attorney AG's office, the county, NPD, of course, the Newark Police Department, and over 40 community organizations. So what is the program that NPSC provides, and how have we started to reimagine public safety? We've done it through a program called Data Informed Community Engagement. So we understand that the community want to participate in public safety, but sometimes you don't find the ways. You don't find what is the pathway that you can follow in order to be part of those conversations. In community policing models, what we see is the police having conversations with the community, but those conversations don't necessarily always lead to action, but only lead to sharing problems and talk about problems, but there's not really a problem resolution, a problem solving component to it, and much less a action model that connects programs with solutions. What we do at NPSC is, my background is on geospatial analysis, so I like mapping. Mapping is one of my passions. I like to understand crime from the perspective of place. So where is crime occurring? It's not new that the police have the capacity to analyze crime. They have what is called CompStat units or data units. Every police department calls it differently. The state police, I believe, call it the ROC. Is where those capabilities are.
Yes.
So
they rely heavily on the ROC.
Exactly.
Yes.
So they all have a data capability, this analysis capability. However, the community have never really had access to this type of intel, this type of knowledge, this type of data. The police really just have started using these technologies for the last 15, 20 years, not really for that long. So they are even improving the ways they are using this technology to date. What we did is we said, why don't we create a table where the community, all the stakeholders that are not necessarily community, I'm talking about businesses and other developers, the local government, and the police can all be at a table where no one is above each other, where all, you want to have a question? All right, just where we are all at the same level. We level the playing field, in other words. No one controls the conversation. The conversation needs to be had. We need to have a conversation where everyone has the capacity to share their lived experiences. And this is something, I'm going to stop there for a second. Our chancellor talked in a recent article about the importance of lived experiences and how we should tap into that community power. Sometimes we give more attention to people with degrees or people with, certain knowledge, but the knowledge of the community is important and should be at the table. The decisions should not be taken at the top. It should include people also that have those lived experiences that are in the community. And that's where Warren is going to have a lot of things to say in a second. So what is the program exactly? We can analyze where crime is happening, so we can talk about the famous hotspots. However, that doesn't really give us an in on how the community can interact. We cannot ask a stakeholder to just go to a street intersection and sit there for the whole day like a police would do when patrolling. That's not the solution. What we do is we have conversations about not what crime necessarily just concentrates, but also what places are connected to crime. So things that we've seen through analysis is that abandoned properties, corner stores, parks, certain gas stations, at certain times of the day, they act as a magnet to certain types of instances of crime. And what we do is we have conversations. So for example, if a corner store in the south ward of Newark is having problems, why is the problem there? What are the conditions that are attracting these types of behaviors there, so that we can start thinking about what can we do to resolve that problem. Now, the solution is not necessarily to send the police. That's actually something we don't talk about. We don't use arrest as a means to deal with the problem, as it's becoming more taboo to say you cannot arrest your way out of the problem. You need to understand what the problem is. And that's where the community comes. We provide them with the data. We are able to identify what places are connected to crime, but we don't know at that point what is happening in those places. That's where the community steps in, and they fill that gap. We have conversations where we connect places with problems, and then debate what can we do about these problems. And I'm going to give you 2 examples. In Newark, one of the main crime problems is auto theft. There's more than 2,000 auto thefts in Newark every year. And we've been able to identify, for example, that a cause of auto theft, one of the main factors driving auto theft in the city is people leaving their cars running. So people leave their car running, and someone which have seen those situations happen in the same locations over time, they're waiting for someone to display those behaviors, and then they steal your car. What we did is we said, okay, what can we do as a group to deal with this situation? We created a flyer. And those flyers were shared with our community partners to distribute them at the problem places. And the idea is not just to share those flyers, but also have conversations with business owners and other people in the ground. Now the conversations are no longer controlled by the police necessarily. They are not the only ones out there. The community are the spokes on the wheel. They are the ones who are getting the story out there. And I'm going to let Warren talk about the Kia problem, Kia and Hyundai's problem, which is more recent, and I'm sure that you know a lot about the Kia and Hyundai's. Another example, and then I want to start the debate because I just wanted to introduce a little bit the approach that we use in Newark with that informed community engagement. Another problem that we saw is with corner stores, bodegas, connected with instances of gun violence and other types of violent crime. And different community organizations did different things dealing with the problem. For example, in the city of Newark, the Office of Violence Prevention decided to do a survey and ask those bodega owners what is going on near those bodegas, those corner stores, why they think, what makes them feel unsafe, what is their perception. And they identified things that are that you can control, things that you can work with, things like lack of lighting. How can we improve lighting to reduce opportunities? Gatherings of youth that are just hanging by the door, and that generates problems. Drug selling. So how do we reduce the likelihood of these situations happening so that we can prevent crime by using community resources as a means to the problem? So as you can see, the idea here is to put community resources, allocate them in places where they can be more effective at both co-creating safety, meaning be part of the solution, but at the same time give them the capacity to be decision makers. They need to be decision makers. The decisions should not be coming from the top, like I said. People with lived experiences, those who know the neighborhood, should be part of the conversation. And just to end, something we should move away is from talking about bad neighborhoods. The idea of bad neighborhood, this is a violent neighborhood. No, crime is very concentrated. It happens in very, very specific places over time. We should have conversations about bad intersections, bad corners, not about neighborhoods. Let's not demystify a little bit the idea that neighborhoods are bad or good. Neighborhoods have problems, and you need to deal with crime the way that you deal with an illness. Think about it from a public health perspective. We look at ways to deal with the problem and give the tools that the community need to deal with those problems, and move away from older models of over-policing necessarily, where black and brown communities are most effective, to models of co-creation of safety, models of co-production. And with that, I just want to let the panel talk a little bit about their take. I mean, I think, Warren, you have great examples of your work in the collaborative, particularly in Lincoln Park. So maybe give a few examples or your impressions.
Sure. Let's start with the bodegas, right? So the bodegas can be a magnet. You'll see when school lets out or that sort of thing. Oh,
I work now?
my mic sounds so the bodegas can be problematic. School lets out, you'll see all the kids kind of gather around the bodegas. And that's not any different than in the suburbs, right? If you go to the Quick Checks, the 7-Elevens out there, same thing. But what you see in the urban environments is that there can be a little more criminal activity that's being kind of covered up by all of these people. And having conversations with the bodega owners has proved interesting. Because first of all, some of them are involved in that, without a doubt. Let's get that off the table. But all of them aren't. Some of them are scared to death. They fear retaliation. They don't know if they were to call the police and the police come, what the next step would be if someone did get arrested. So one of the things that I've learned is it's all about relationships. Right? And when you go out here and you meet the dealers or whoever it is, there's power structures, right? Just like the lieutenant colonel said, he supervises all these. It's no different on the block. You have people there's power structures that are in place. And so that looking at that location and not specifically just let's lock people up, all right? We were talking earlier, you know, we're coming off of mass incarceration, all right? We're tired of seeing our brothers and sisters and fathers and mothers, like we're tired of seeing them get locked up, man, all right? And you know, one of the things that we also are realizing is you're locking them up for things that are really social problems, not criminal problems, right? If we start looking at some of these issues from a social lens, and we start attacking some of these things and saying, okay, we got issues here, and a lot of them are historic, right? They've years and years of neglect. Those of you know that the Newark Rebellion, there's certain areas they've never rebuilt, right? And you have a lot of poverty. You have these public education is not really that great in this area. The family structures are troubled, right? So all of these things are happening, and those are social problems. You don't lock somebody up behind that, right? So I think that I'm gonna speak this, and I'm gonna pass it off to Lieutenant Colonel. I think the other thing I want to talk about is this Kia challenge, right? So there's a social media platform called TikTok, right? Okay. So you know, these kids playing on the TikTok or whatever, and they come up with this thing that they want to see who can steal these cars, because they discovered that there's a glitch in the software, and these cars are very easy to break into. Now this is where we're at right now. It's a very technological world, and then the kids would go out here and they're breaking into these Kias and Hyundais for fun. But remember, we closed all the community centers and the boys and girls clubs and all that, and then the parents ain't home, don't know where the kids are. Some of the parents are working 2 jobs, they can't really control all that. So they found some fun, and it's stealing our cars, right? But these are babies. We don't want to see them locked up, right? So you have to be able to be creative. You have to be able to build relationships. But you got to be able to, they got to trust you. Because if they don't trust you, nothing else is going on. And that's where the law enforcement or academia runs into some challenges because of the history, right? There's history there where they're like, I don't know, man. Somebody told me about Tuskegee, right? Somebody told me about George Floyd. Right, so all these things are in the community's mind, so that they're very hesitant if someone approaches them and say that they're from those institutions, right? The partnership has been extremely effective, right, with law enforcement as well as academia, because they'll say, Warren, he all right? He with you now. Is he okay? Right? Because I've built the trust up. Right? So this partnership has really been tremendous, and we've been able to, I guess, see an impact in areas that we normally wouldn't have. So I will pass that off, sir.
Great point. So can I highlight a couple things?
Yeah.
Just that I want the group to hear, because I heard a lot that I think everyone here should hear that the state police offers, right? So we have a program that's called the Citizens Academy. Have you heard of our Citizens Academy yet?
I haven't.
So has anyone here heard of the State Police Citizens Academy, or has anyone come through our academy? So this is, and you're hearing it straight from the horse's mouth here. So this is an open invite to everything that I've heard so far, because we just had our first night of a brand new Citizens Academy. It's like an 8-week or so program that we try to do as continuous as we can, a couple times a year, more if the the demand is there, but it's an 8-week program that gives you a full look into the backstage of what we do in policing throughout the whole state. The state police runs the program, but it's a New Jersey policing free look into what we do, how we do it, why we do it. We have multiple nights at the Rock where all of our intelligence and investigative work stems from, but from our Office of Professional Standards, which houses all of our discipline actions and how all of that plays out within our own organization, to how our academy functions. We have a field operations night, which is that branch that has all of our road stations residing in. So it's a fantastic program. Again, it's free. Anyone that's been through our Citizens Academy, it has changed their life. It has changed their perspective, especially allowing them to take everything that they're getting from that academy and they take that back to their home communities. So that's just something I want to put out there. Somebody like yourself should absolutely come and be a part of our Citizens Academy. So you can bring that back up here to Newark and bring that to Rutgers Newark, or whatever academic platforms that you reside on. So that's just a plug for our Citizens Academy, and that's open. It's a very, very small background process that we put everybody through, because you're in all of our confidential, secure state police facilities. You're meeting with the top commanders from every single branch in the state police, up to the colonel, to include all 4 branch commanders. And that's throughout the 8 weeks. There's great tours. It's a fantastic program. So anybody and everyone is welcome to join that program. So through John, through me, I know your conference has all my contact info, so just let us know if anybody's interested in doing something like that. Second, I want to talk about precision policing and our public dashboards, just because I don't know if we talked about this last conference, our public accessible dashboards, but we talk about data and we talk about precision policing as to where things are happening and where they are not happening. So we have open to the public, right? You go on the New Jersey Office of Attorney General's website. You go on to it's called OLEPS. I'll leave all this information so folks that are part of the conference you can get it easily. But you go onto a portal through the Attorney General's website. It's a use of force dashboard and a traffic stop dashboard, and you can see all 100% of the entire state's police activity. The motor vehicle stop dashboard is just state police. Use of force is all state police or all police officers in New Jersey. And it's broken down by race, by gender, by the initial interaction and post interaction. So if there's a discipline, if there's not a discipline, if the case goes to court, so on and so forth. So all open and accessible to the public. So that's just a couple of things that the state police offers that everyone from every level, whatever your involvement in the community is, if you have some type of civic duty, a professional job, it doesn't matter. All walks of life come into our Citizens Academy. So that's a huge program. And to your point, precision policing is how that is the priority in the state police. We're trying to spread that throughout the state. We don't want to arrest people. Again, you're hearing it first. The colonel would say the same thing. Our lieutenant colonel of our investigations branch asked me to say this, that we don't want to arrest people that are making mistakes, right? Not the brothers or the sisters or the mothers or the fathers. We don't want that to happen either. We're going after those individuals for arrest purposes that have 10 or more major gun violence cases in their history. If they have multiple car theft cases, known car theft cases in their history. So that precision policing, narrowing down to the street corner, narrowing our approach to criminal interdiction to an actual individual. There's not that many individuals that we've identified that are doing that are conducting a majority of the major crimes. So again, the folks that are out there just making mistakes, I think we're all tired of those people getting arrested as well. So that's our general precision policing mission throughout the state police. We're trying to spread that as best we can throughout the whole state as well. So I know I spoke generally, but I didn't know if you had any questions.
I'm going to connect that because you spoke about policing, of course, because you are at the police. And in my case, I've been, since we started, the focus of the group has been more on the community, not because, of course, the police are, in the end, the main stakeholder, but I don't think the community had been part of those conversations so often before we got started with NPSC and before we got started with this model. And
Number one highlight of our Citizens Academy
is to connect
it's for the community, and they run every day. It's a 3-hour meet. They run the night, and it goes over every night because the citizens, right, our community members, they want it to go over. It's a fantastic program.
So I'm going to talk about an example of a student that I was interviewing for a community outreach position. He was born in the South Ward. Was arrested and spent over 15 years in prison because of manslaughter. And when I was talking with him, he's now part of a reentry program, which is also a great initiative to help people coming out of jail and make sure that they don't repeat the same mistakes. But he told me a story that I think connects very well with some of the work that we've been doing. He said to me, I'm now interning at this nonprofit in Newark, La Casa de Don Pedro, a very well-established nonprofit. And he mentioned that he's learning about opportunities that he wasn't aware of back before he made the mistake that took him to prison. And he said, had I known about the opportunities that these type of groups are offering, maybe I would have made other choices. And he connected that to a problem of all I could see my world was my street, my block, the people that I was interacting with. I was not connected with the bigger picture, let's call it that way, okay? Which is education in the end, let's be frank. It's education, it's access to opportunities. In the end, we go back to the same problem over and over. So something that I've mentioned multiple times is that I think the police know their role. I just think the community should understand that they can also play a role. The police cannot deal with everything, and they know it, and they actually want to share the burden of community safety because they know they can. There's problems of mental health problems, homelessness, issues that the police are not well equipped. They are not trained to deal with those problems, but because they are first responders, they're the first ones to show up. And then what? And then what is the next step? So what I say to community organizations is, don't wait on your desk, on your office. You all have a presence in the community. Don't wait in your office for that referral to come in. Be proactive. Go to those problem places. That's where I connect the data with the problem. Look at the problem places. Think about what's the problem and use your community resources regardless of what it is. You can be providing after-school programming or access to the arts or counseling, whatever is your program. Use those programs, do outreach, which sounds easy, but it's not easy. Right. Do outreach in the areas that require it because that's how you tap into your customers, let's call it that way. The people who need you, the youth at risk, the adults at risk, people with substance abuse issues, people that in the end up trapped in the criminal justice system. How do you use those powers, your community resources, and allocate them more strategically to help? And you're hearing it again. You're hearing it first. Community outreach is one of my passions, by the way, right? So all I simply ask on behalf of the state police, the colonel would scream this if he was here along with me. Invite us in. Mm-hmm. So anything you do that's community outreach driven, just invite us in. You see the troopers floating around today, the Sergeant First Class that's outside. That's one of her primary roles with the state police. She's an assistant unit head for recruiting, but community outreach is something that she does more than half of her time during the week, 9 to 5. So anything community outreach driven, please invite us in. And it doesn't matter the category. It doesn't matter the location. We will show up. So that's a big priority with us.
Okay, Linda, before you, I just want to expound upon some of the things that the panel members talked about. They talked about, when most persons look at intercities like Patterson, Newark, Camden, they think that everyone who lives in those municipalities live in a crime-ridden area. But they talked about quality of life issues. Quality of life issues, Lyndon Brown lives in the West Ward of Newark. He won't tolerate people standing on the corner without notifying the authorities. Littering, congregating on corners, possibly to do some wrongdoings. So quality of life issues are so very important to persons who stay in large municipalities like Patterson, Newark, Camden. So that's important. And they also talked about children having fun stealing cars, relating it to TikTok. One of the theories, and I was a juvenile officer in Newark for a period of time, and one of the theories we came up with why children stole vehicles, because in the morning, if you lived in certain parts of Newark, you would see people coming off 280 West, like myself. 280 West, they would come off 78, they would come off 109, and they would be standing on their stoop or on their front porches, and they would see all these professional people coming into Newark with all these beautiful cars. And they are saying to themselves, I can't envision myself having that BMW, somebody talked about earlier, that Lexus. So if I can't envision myself getting it the proper way by purchasing it, I'm going to go out and see it. I had my car stolen twice in Newark while I was volunteering. One, you probably haven't heard about the organization unless you're from the area, the International Youth Organization. I was a volunteer there. I had a decent, expensive car, and I didn't think that it would be stolen. And sure enough, I come outside from a meeting and my car's gone. The second time I was on a board at the University of Medicine and Dentistry before it became Rutgers Medical School, and I left. It was my fault. He talked about people getting out of their car, leave their car running. Well, I should leave my key in my car because I could do that where I live. And they busted the window, found my key, and drove off with my vehicle. And I was a police officer at this time, and I'm calling someone that I knew in dispatch, and they said, John, they were up on Avon Avenue doing donuts in your Infiniti. That's the type of car I had at that time. But again, quality of life issues. Why do children steal cars? And the Lieutenant Colonel brought something up that's very important that most persons don't take advantage of. Every law enforcement agency in the United States of America must have a division or an office that investigate the conduct of law enforcement persons. Every law enforcement agency in the United States of America must have that office. And he talked about the Office of Professional Standards or Internal Affairs. If you are mistreated by a law enforcement person, there are persons that you can go and bring your concerns to. That is the Office of Professional Standards. If someone came to my office, because I spent most of my time in community affairs, I not only told them where internal affairs was, I took them to, I walked them over to internal affairs to make sure that they went to the right office and they didn't have to look for it. So those are some of the things that that law enforcement do and should do, and we only have about 10 minutes before the next session starts, but, again, if anyone has closing statements, I know Lyndon had a question before I made my closing comments.
I have a few questions and a few comments. My first question is, do you all have a strong relationship with the governor's office? Because I feel in urban areas, the governor's bail reform law is putting people right back on the street. Even if you're a homeowner, I have a lot of women in my community who are victims of domestic violence. When they call the police because they've been beaten, and that person's back home by 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, they stop calling. And so crime goes unreported because they know I gotta go to court, I gotta see this person, I saw this person rob somebody, I'm gonna call, and they're gonna come back and see me. So I think the bail reform in urban areas is not working, and this law enforcement contingency needs to, give some feedback to the governor, saying in urban areas this is what we're seeing. It's not enough for the community. We all need to say that needs to be changed because our juveniles are out of control. Out of control. And then I don't even see a strong presence of law enforcement agencies in our schools recruiting young men and women when they graduate to be a corrections officer, police officer, state trooper. There should be a strong pipeline of getting young people from the communities to work in their communities because that's going to increase the respect that they give from the community. When you have somebody who looks like you in your community, it makes a difference. So I think it's important that we strengthen that pipeline, not just with the corrections, but with the state police. There's so many a plethora of positions that these people can apply for that they're not aware of because nobody comes to the schools. There's no community-based organizations that's having all the law enforcement agencies come to recruit. And I think when we start that pipeline, we may see, more young people off the street. And I was president of my precinct council, so every month we met with our precinct captain, and we got authentic data from him. So when I hear a captain say, "Oh, we haven't had any crime in our community, we've had 100% peace," I said, "Are you kidding me? How this Carjack been beaten unconscious on 3rd Avenue and 7th Street, and my neighbors had two home invasions, so we say there's no crime in this community." I know that's not true. So if I can't trust law enforcement to provide authentic data to the community, I don't want to be able to take it.
I got jumped by 3 girls on a bus.
Right?
My girlfriend told me, "You were in the army." She said, "I knew karate. I don't remember learning karate." She said, "As soon as the girl punched me in my jaw, she didn't even get her hand back. I grabbed her by her face, threw her down, and commenced to wailing on her ass." Her sisters jumped in and I whooped their ass. Punching me in my face.
Right.
You crazy as hell.
So I think to less to combat, but more of the recidivist, right? So the one issue because it's a big one, all great points and great story too. I'm sorry you had to go through that. But the recidivists, repeat offenders, folks out there that are responsible for really egregious or heinous crimes, they either don't go to jail or they go to jail for too short of a time and they're right back on the street. That is a problem that, at least from law enforcement's perspective, it's a tough climb because that's a legislative issue, that's an attorney general's office issue, it's a governor's office issue, and it's a courtroom issue. So it starts to stretch pretty far from law enforcement. So you would need a different panel in here to get some juice to that response. But the recruiting issue, I agree. We need the community. As far as law enforcement is concerned, we absolutely need those community leaders to help us, recruit. Those your own community members are going to trust their own community leaders initially, and then they're going to trust who you trust. So I think that will help the lines of communication with recruiting.
At the point of what you said is, you said the police say there's no crime, but there is crime. And that is something that we talked at our meetings, is that we use crime data that the police provide us, but we know that crime data only represents a portion of what actually is happening. And that's not the police's fault, it's just that not all crimes are reported. So sometimes there's other methods to know more, asking the community. what have you seen? Or there's victimization surveys where you ask people, tell me about what you've seen. That's why perception, there's two aspects. There's what we know because it's been reported, and the more severe the crime is, usually the better they're reporting. The least severe, theft, we only know probably about 30% of thefts that are happening on the street because most of them are not reported. A homicide, for example, will be one of the best reported ones because there's a body, so it's hard not to. But again, it's important to know that the police don't have access to everything that happens because not everything is reported, and that is the.
Okay, but they also downgrade stuff. When it's a farm robbery,
That's that we're gonna let. I'm gonna let.
Yeah. Listen. We ain't gonna let them off the hook that easy. Listen, I'm with you, man. I'm with you. And a lot of times, the information, because it's always been their information, this open sharing is new to them, right? They're not, it hasn't been, oh, come on in. That's not what you're getting, right? So sometimes well, wait a minute, man. I know they just have, oh, that's under investigation. They'll hide behind that cloth real quick, all right? So it's a relationship. We're building it.
I was just curious to say,
Don't
give up.
Yeah, don't give up,
don't
man.
give up.
I'm telling you, it's
Don't
getting
give up.
better. I've seen this. It's getting better. Just like when we're talking about quality of life. The brother brought up quality of life, right? You know, call the authorities. Who? The police? These kids are sitting out here on the corner. They're not bothering nobody, man. What are you calling the police for, right? Newark does not even have a loitering law. There's no law. You can't lock nobody up for loitering. So now you come uniform down, right? Not considering all the historic trauma that comes along with that uniform, right? I don't care if they recruited you out of West Side High or Patterson High, or wherever they got you from. There's trauma when that uniform shows up, especially if you have not taken the time to know and say, Malik, man, you better go and get off that corner, boy. You don't even know who you're approaching, right? So the relationships have to be built. And I'm going to tell you, right, to law enforcement's defense, brother, it's getting better. It's getting better. I've been doing this for a minute. Years ago, before that consent decree and all that stuff, oh, it wasn't none of that, man. They was throwing you up against the wall like wasn't nothing to talk about. All you can listen to the mayor talk about how his head has been busted, and those of you that know his father, the police, it was us and them. You can't just wipe that away with doing this or having one training or one seminar. That type of trauma doesn't go away that easy.
It's a lot of questions.
Yeah, go ahead. Let's start here and go this way.
I have two questions. One is, you mentioned that with TikTok, some of the young kids being influenced to steal cars just for joy. But I wanted your opinion on young kids, 15, and teenagers stealing cars as part of an organized crime group of adults, where they are going into suburban areas, sometimes breaking into the homes, stealing cars. Sometimes it's an opportunity where someone's leaving a fob in here, clear sight at present, or leaving a key in the car. But when they are actually taking these cars out of homes, out of driveways, and that's part of an organized group that sends them down to the Fort North and they go to Africa or whatever happens with them, how are you handling that? And it's not just a joyride type of thing. And this is something where these kids are probably getting paid and they're being controlled by adults, but because they're underage, I guess the adults feel the penalties won't be as hard. And then the second one is, if you can just say, where is the Citizens Academy located? Where's it actually?
So it's centered out of the New Jersey State Police headquarters, which is in Trenton, but the program spans the length of the state.
So do you
So-
have to actually be physically in Trenton?
So in 8 weeks, to quickly answer the question, it's an 8-week program, give or take a week. Every week, well, let's say 6 out of those 8 weeks, it's in a different location. This Citizens Academy class, they have a night at MetLife at the Meadowlands, where the Giants and the Jets play. So they'll have an entire night there, at the Rock one night. So it depends on the theme of the night, but from Trenton, maybe a spot or two just south of Trenton up to North Jersey.
And law enforcement, they'll be able to answer this better. Let me impress him to show I pay attention at these meetings, okay? The last data we saw on car thefts, I'll just throw a number. Let's say 100 cars were stolen in a month, right? And that's a low figure, but let's just say that. And then they showed what type of cars, right? It might have been 1 Mercedes, 2 Beamers, 3 Range Rovers, 55 Kias, 65 Hyundais, right? That's not so much this organized. Because I came in thinking the same thing, like New Jersey Drive, like, oh, they've taken us down the port, sending it over to Nigeria, they selling these cars, this is a whole ring, right? That's not what I'm seeing with the data right now.
It's all happening. You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen,
It's
but
it's all happening because you're in the numbers. You're spot on with the
I'm
numbers
close.
too.
Okay,
'Cause it's
okay.
30 to 40 in a day is low.
Yeah.
In a day is low. That's considered okay. It was only 30 today, so that's not a good thing. A law enforcement response to that is, precision policing helps. We've narrowed it down. It's in my notes. This is right from the rock, right? 53 juveniles under the age of 17, 53 in the state have been identified. We know who they are, where they live, who they work for, who they don't work for. That's 53. So those aren't the Kia kids. That's not the TikTok kids.
Yeah.
Those are
with the situation. It's not the entire way to deal with the problem, but it helps the community to take action and residents to be more aware. So.
Okay, next, we're gonna have a hard stop in about 5 to 8 minutes because the other session has started. I don't want you guys to miss.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
So I just have two quick questions. So when I think about what Lyndon says, and he talks about the governor and legislation and things like that, I think that's a really important point. And when we think about relationships and the power and the influence that relationships have, how can we, I guess, count on New Jersey State Police and as a person who has the position and the power to influence, let's say the governor or the courts in some way, right? Because you're closer to them than the community members, right? How could we count on New Jersey State Police to kind of, because when you think about community outreach, it could look like you coming out and hanging out with us in Lincoln Park, but it could also look like when you're done hanging out with us and you see what we need and what we're experiencing, it could also look like you representing us in rooms where, right, these conversations
Absolutely,
are being
yeah,
had.
and what should happen, right? It should grow. That part of the relationship should grow as well, right? So that's a good question, and I'll give you as candid of a response to just one of those questions or one of your comments is, so you hit the nail on the head. I'm a lieutenant colonel, right? 22 years in the state police, lots of institutional knowledge of all of our state offices, and it's still tough for me to influence certain legislation and certain concerns and certain issues. But you're right, I am close or closer than some others, right? So that's on me. That's on the peers who are like me, right? Who have an equal relationship with the colonel or with the AG or with the governor's chief of staff to get these issues not just heard but dealt with. It's not as easy as we would like it to be, but it's not impossible either. So it's this has to happen. So the pressure is on conferences like this and conversations and panels like what's happening today. I know that's a general way to answer your question because you're absolutely right, but we have to just keep this going.
I think,
We have to keep it going.
I ask more for the purposes of the conversation because it is something that it can be more complex, but a lot of
Yes.
us don't know that. A lot of us don't even know what that process can look like.
Right.
Right? So I was just curious. And then the second thing is, what actions are being taken to provide this information about Citizen Academy to the community? Because the people that are not in here don't know that exists.
Right.
I wouldn't have known that
Right.
if I wasn't here today. And I think that's a really important
Right.
program for people to see.
Absolutely.
There's a big disconnection between police officers and the community, and that that gets a lot of problems and issues because if we can't trust the people that are put in place to protect us, then who do we count on?
Right.
How do we move about in the places that we live?
And that's a great point. So we try during that 8-week span, we try our best, right, to put that pressure, that onus on that Citizens Academy graduate, right? We try to encourage and support everything that they're getting at that Citizens Academy because everybody can't come, right? If one person in this room is lucky enough to come to Citizens Academy in 4 months, that's a win, right? But the pressure will be on that one rep to bring everything back, right? You got to bring everything back.
What about
Right. Right.
flyers and things like that in schools? How
Yeah.
are we getting this information
Right.
out to the
So, and we rely a lot on social media. So you have to be frequent on our websites just to get that type of information. But it's not a perfect model.
Okay.
It really isn't. It's a lot of, it becomes competitive and it becomes very selective, as you can imagine. So a lot depends on prior community leaders and prior Citizens Academy members and current community and civic leaders. All right, so
Thank you.
Okay, that lady who came in with the black,
is getting
nice
ready.
black suit on. She,
So we gotta go?
You got one more in front?
oh, okay, no, go ahead. We gotta, if you can make your questions.
All of that stuff was, I had a very luxury car, and they don't steal them easy because it's hard to steal.
There you go.
Those little cars is what they get. So, like they say, all you gotta do is you put stuff on it to keep you from stealing.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
That answers it as far as I'm concerned. But you said you was a social worker, right?
I was what?
That you're a social worker.
Yes, ma'am.
With the police department?
No,
No.
no.
Because that's my problem, that's a problem
Yes.
And
Mhm.
they need help, they need a social worker in there with the police.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
You got that one?
just because I want to make you feel a little bit better, because I know with Newark City Police Department
They have it.
and the state police, probably two of the more aggressive,
Yeah.
in a positive way, of working hand in hand with social workers in the field, responding to emergency calls when there's a mental health scenario.
But you don't
Oh.
always know.
No, you don't. You
Some
don't.
of the ki- a lot of the
You
kids
don't.
today have mental problems.
Yeah.
There's so much crazy stuff
Right.
out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
We gotta
You got
do
Newark
it.
City does the best job.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
really do.
What I'm saying is, if they have a social worker in their courtroom,
Mhm.
and when they see a kid that's off the hooks or whatever, they may not really know what it is, but let them, the social
One of
worker
you need to
deal
go to
with the
Citizens
person,
Academy.
find out what the problem is before you sentence them. Because I don't think they need to go to jail.
Okay, just let me, before we get to your question. In the Newark Police Department, when they have academy classes starting, for every 10 police officers that the Newark Police Department hires, they hire one social worker. They have 7 police precincts in the city of Newark. All of those precincts have certified social workers. Now, that they not only have degrees in social work, but they have gone through the academy with those police officers. So for every 10 police officers, one social worker. And there are social workers in every precinct in all of the 7 precincts.
So, ma'am, it's getting better.
That is
But-
up to par on special education. Because those are where the kids is having their problems.
Yeah, but ma'am, it's definitely getting better, but I want you to think about this, because we're definitely not there. One social worker in each precinct, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. What's that doing for us Friday night when Malik and them bugging out on the corner? Nothing, right? So when they were talking about defund the police, right, and Mayor Baraka took the initiative with that, and he started to spread some of the resources to social service agencies, all right? It's a process, and there was a lot of pushback for that, all right? One of the things that we are seeing, though, is that the social service world is working in collaboration with law enforcement, all right? So that we can start addressing these things that you're talking about from a social work lens and not so much from a law enforcement lens, right? Because some things need velvet gloves. They don't need the cavalry coming in.
Yeah.
They don't.
My husband was a police officer. My daughter was a captain in the Army. She was the first female and black captain in the Army.
Okay.
She retired now. Her name is Amanda Coops. And she bring people into the police department all the time. She even teach them how to pay some tax. That's her little business of her own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm glad I saw you because Amanda owes me money.
You went just a little bit too far. You were good. You went too far.
It's a kind of quick question. What is the policy on no knock warrants, stand your ground, so stand your ground not only in Florida, it's in New Jersey. And
Okay, I don't know how to.
chokeholds.
Doctor?
The what?
Maybe Dr. Santana?
No, that I don't know.
Wrong guy. So that's, I mean, definitely all 3 parts we probably have to have aside. Like, I can't, I would need a minute to research and make sure some folks were in the conversation with us to speak to.
My thing is, like,
Mhm.
some areas, police we can't read, and they get the address wrong,
Mm.
and they do a no-knock warrant. I suppose that happened in.
So that's not a policy issue, that's a performance issue.
Yeah.
So the performance of going to a wrong address to serve a legal, a legal purpose that's a whole nother issue.
All
But
right, what about the chokehold?
so I mean, we have a use of force policy that will create a lengthy conversation, but it's very protective when it comes to the citizens versus law enforcement when it comes to certain chokeholds to a number of other maneuvers. But that's not taught in any New Jersey academy. Good or bad, I was actually the commandant of our state police academy, which is the overseer to every New Jersey academy, and choke codes in the PTC or for the New Jersey State Police, they're not taught. They're not taught. So that's an independent performance issue as well that wouldn't be tolerated.
What about that standard ground? Let's say
Right.
I live in, I don't know, Essex Fells,
Mm-hmm.
very high
Mm-hmm.
little community. And let's say I'm driving the car, or my son is driving his car breaks down, cell phone doesn't work, knocks on the door. And this other person, of different nationality, opens the door, sees a black guy, and shoots him. He's standing his ground in New Jersey.
Yeah, I mean that's from local to state laws that we'd have to have a deeper conversation.
Okay, we're gonna let, Dr. Santana, close us out.
Not me.
You opened, you got to close, Dominic.
I got to close. Thank you so much, everyone.